Did you know that 97% of men never truly understand what a woman feels when they suddenly decide to stop talking to her forever? Today, you'll discover 5 hidden emotions that often begin to surface when a man's voice completely disappears from a woman's life. But before we get into them, there's one important idea you need to understand. One of these emotions may genuinely surprise you because most men underestimate the deep psychological impact that prolonged silence can have. Many people believe that cutting off communication is simply a matter of physical distance. They assume that a woman will move on, forget what happened, and eventually stop thinking about the man altogether. But psychology tells a much deeper story. When a man completely disappears from a woman's life, she isn't just losing conversations. She's losing an emotional presence that had quietly become part of her daily routine. Psychological research suggests that the human brain reacts strongly to sudden interruptions in communication, especially when an important emotional bond already exists. Silence isn't experienced as the absence of words alone. It is often interpreted as a message in itself. That is why prolonged silence can trigger a wave of powerful emotions. Now ask yourself this. How many times have you believed that your absence meant nothing to her? Or worse, how many times have you convinced yourself that your words never really mattered? This way of thinking prevents many men from understanding emotional attachment and the psychology behind relationships. As a man develops emotional discipline, inner stability, and respect for his own boundaries, he begins to realize that his presence carries real value. The same becomes true for his silence. Silence is no longer simply the absence of communication. It becomes a conscious decision, and every conscious decision carries emotional consequences. The first emotion is deep confusion, created by uncertainty. At first, she may assume you're simply busy or that you need some space. She might expect you'll reach out again in a few days. But as days turn into weeks and the silence continues, uncertainty slowly transforms into anxiety. She begins asking herself, is this temporary or is it really over? This uncertainty creates intense psychological pressure. Her mind keeps replaying the last conversation, searching for the exact moment when everything may have changed. Because ongoing silence isn't just a lack of communication, it's a complete break in connection. And the human mind struggles to accept situations that offer no explanation. The second emotion is the painful loss of emotional connection. When you communicated regularly, your voice became part of her emotional routine. Your messages, the way you called her name, and the conversations you shared gradually became small emotional rituals. Most people never realize the value of these little moments until they're completely gone. Something happens during her day, and her first instinct is to tell you about it. But suddenly that option no longer exists. No reply, no conversation, no familiar presence. That is often when she begins to understand the true value of a relationship she may have quietly taken for granted. The third emotion is a deep sense of rejection. There are many ways people create distance. Slow replies, less attention, gradually becoming emotionally unavailable. But complete silence works differently. It creates certainty. It doesn't simply say, I'm pulling away. It often feels like it's saying, this is over. That's why total silence can hurt far more than a slow emotional withdrawal. At this stage, she may begin asking herself why she was completely removed from your life, and why even the smallest conversations have disappeared. When the mind cannot find answers, it creates its own explanations, and those explanations are often much harsher than reality itself. The fourth emotion is helplessness. If she tries to reconnect or simply hopes for any response but is met only with silence, she gradually realizes that she no longer has control over the situation. And losing that sense of control creates powerful emotional frustration. She may consider sending a casual message, finding an excuse to reach out, or simply checking whether another conversation is still possible. But every unanswered attempt reinforces the feeling that nothing she does can change the outcome. At that point, silence becomes heavier than words themselves. The fifth, and perhaps the strongest emotion, is realizing that silence has become the message. Sometimes the absence of words communicates far more than a long explanation ever could. When someone explains why they're leaving, there is often still some emotional connection remaining. But when communication disappears entirely, it creates the feeling of finality. This is where many men make a common mistake. They believe strength comes from having the last word, proving they're right, or responding emotionally. But true emotional maturity is often revealed through calmness, healthy boundaries, and the ability to walk away without unnecessary drama, conflict, or chaos. At the same time, it's important to understand this clearly. This perspective is not about manipulation or intentionally causing emotional pain. It's about recognizing that communication has value, and so does its absence. Sometimes choosing silence is the healthiest decision, especially when a relationship has become toxic, disrespectful, or emotionally exhausting. When a man begins prioritizing his inner peace, he realizes that not every situation deserves a lengthy explanation, and not every relationship deserves unlimited access to his emotional energy. So if you ever choose to walk away in silence, don't do it out of anger. Do it for peace, not as punishment, but as protection for your emotional well-being. Because when silence is used with awareness, it isn't cruelty, it's a boundary. And once you truly understand this psychological truth, you stop wondering whether your absence has any impact. You realize that people often don't appreciate a voice until it has completely disappeared. Value consistency, protect your emotional stability, set healthy boundaries with confidence. Because in a world filled with constant noise, silence can sometimes become the most powerful message of all.